All right, everyone, welcome to the webinar for specifically IAOA members. I'm Maddy Martin with Smith.ai. I'm the VP of Marketing here, and I'm really excited to present to you the seminar today, which is all about leaky lead funnels. So let me go ahead and share my screen and let's get into it. All right, so we're going to be talking about converting more conversations to clients in 5 steps. Just one housekeeping note, if you have any questions throughout, feel free to post in the chat or use the Q&A. I will keep an eye on both of those, and I'll leave a little bit of time at the end to make sure that we have time for questions. So anything that comes up, too small, too big, high level, low level, whatever it is, don't be afraid to ask it. You can also DM me if you prefer, but I will keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A. So as I mentioned, I'm Maddy Martin. I am the VP of Marketing at Smith.ai. Before Smith.ai, I was at 2 other startups, and then I had a career in nonprofits for grant-backed government agencies serving their communities. So I have a lot of respect for the small, strapped business owner, and I'm very familiar with high growth activities for efficiency and affordable cost. Often when I'm working in a startup, I'm thinking, how can I get the most growth for in the least amount of time with the least amount of energy and stress and effort and anxiety. So even though I'm not a small business owner myself, I work with a lot of small business owners at Smith.ai. We are a 24/7 virtual receptionist service. We do intake and call answering, website chat, sales outreach campaigns for mostly solo and small, some mid-sized business owners. We can take over all of it, or we can take over just a portion of those communications. And we partner with business owners to help them be more profitable, productive, and just have better work-life balance and less stress in their lives. So what we're going to talk about today, and just, I guess, one more housekeeping note, if you see me use like the word firm or business, or, I'm thinking agency, we work with a lot of different industries, a lot of attorneys, financial advisors, et cetera. So sometimes I use the word firm to represent a business in general. So you'll see that throughout here. Now, the 4 things we're going to cover in order to achieve, more conversions from the conversations that are happening with potential clients. Common intake pitfalls that limit business growth. This is a really important one when it comes to that initial conversation, screening, collecting data. There are a lot of mistakes that happen there, often not actually taking the step to collect data, that do limit business growth. 2, how to identify symptoms of faulty intake systems. So it's really easy to just go along your day-to-day and feel like there's no real bumps in the road. Well, it depends on your suspension, right? So I'm here to help diagnose the suspension and say, like, where are those symptoms and how is that affecting you? Later on, when you're maybe working with clients who you didn't really want to work with, you're not finding the best leads, how do you use your intake to determine who the best quality leads are going to be, and then to put your focus and energy towards those before others? We'll also talk about components of the best intake systems that benefit your agency and your potential clients. So making sure that they have the information they need to feel strongly about working with your business, choosing your agency, et cetera. And then proven ways to better control and streamline your intake system for consistent results. And a lot of that has to do with, key affordable software solutions, maybe some talent systems, so that you are, taking a potential client who you've identified and getting them to that next step, getting them to that first appointment, getting them to sign without a lot of delay or cumbersome workflows. Now, before we get into the presentation, I just like to think about leaky lead funnels in general just seem really, really unfair. Like, you've paid to get the leads, and then you don't end up realizing as much business as you expect or want out of, this marketing campaign, this advertising, this lead funnel. And I'll talk about lead funnels momentarily, but right now, just close your eyes for a second and think about when you're a kid, maybe like, a tween or whatever, you're babysitting, you're lawn mowing, whatever it was that you did to make a few extra bucks, right? Pulling weeds from my mother's garden. And you earn a little bit of cash, and then you go and get yourself something, and you pay for your ice cream, let's say. And the cashier gives you your ice cream cone, and you then get bumped by a dog, or you run into your friend, or you get distracted and it melts in your hands, and you sort of think like, man, that's so unfair. Like, I didn't get to enjoy this ice cream that I purchased. Well, wake back up. Here we are in modern times. You are an agency owner, and you are paying for things that you are letting melt, basically, sit there without your attention on it, or someone bumps into you and, the ice cream falls on the ground. Like, that often is what happens with this leaky lead funnel. So, everyday leads are slipping through your fingers. And it's not like a blame game here. There are other things that are taking your time and attention, but there are opportunities to improve what's going on here so that you don't keep dropping that ice cream that you just paid for, right? So to me, that's a really great visual example of, like, I relate to it. I think a lot of people relate to just the simplicity of what's going on there. And it really is that simple in a lot of ways when it comes to businesses. So, a few statistics just so we understand, like, first of all, you're not alone. And second of all, I look at these statistics and I think there's so much room to get a competitive advantage if you do a few things right. So we know that consumers expect an instantaneous response. I mean, an immediate, a quick response. We'll see that 5 minutes, 1 minute can make a huge difference. So really, it's an instantaneous response. 50% of lead generation budgets are wasted on leads who are never contacted. So if you think about those organic search results where your name, your business name appears, people who are, getting referred on Facebook and other social media, people are getting in touch with businesses, and then those businesses never get back in touch with them. So if you think about, online search, let's say that you're ranking like in the 5th. If those first 4 people don't actually answer their phones, they don't respond to, a text message, they're not getting back to their voicemails ever, or within a reasonable amount of time, a couple minutes, then that person who's looking for an agency is just going to keep going down the list until they find someone. And in a fascinating turn of events, 2 out of 3 potential clients actually base their decision to hire an agency, a firm, a business, professional services. They are basing their decision on who is first to respond 2 out of 3 times, right? So it doesn't matter how fancy your brand is, or how polished your website is, or how much you spent on your logo, or how well crafted even, and this is really what burns people, your sales approach is, because you're likely to get that business just if you pick up, right? And your sales approach can be really well honed and increase your conversion rate, but most budgets are wasted because the leads are never contacted in the first place. No one's on the receiving end of that. Now, 80%, not surprisingly, of marketing leads never convert into sales. Well, why is that? Because 50% of them are not even getting in touch, let alone having an opportunity to convert into sales. So, why is this happening, and why are people ignoring these leads? Well, when your phone rings, just like when my phone rings, I can see that it's an unknown number, and I don't know if that anonymous caller is the best new client, a vendor who I want to talk to, a partner in the community who I haven't yet connected with, or just haven't saved their information in my phone, or spam sales calls, etc. They're on the rise. They have been for years now. We know that that's why we don't pick up, because we don't want to take the interruption. We don't know if it's worthy of an interruption. We know that interruptions are really time consuming, and why don't we just let it go to voicemail? And that'll be our screening mechanism. The problem is people don't leave voicemails. And then when you try and call them back, whether or not they left a voicemail, less than half of those calls are going to be answered. So now you're in this diminishing return sort of game of, let me see if I can play phone tag with them. Maybe if you're lucky, they'll play phone tag with you. And you'll play this game and say like, is that the number that I didn't recognize earlier that I called back? It's not really an efficient system. So the last thing here that I want to point out on the data side is that, almost 70% of leads consulted with a business they didn't hire. So what's critical here is to figure out, how do you pick out those leads upon that first conversation, because you're going to start like picking up right away. You're going to have help to do so. Then how do you determine, is this a serious lead? Is this someone who has like the budget, the timing aligns, they're in the right area for your agency to work with them? That's the most important thing, to actually serve up those questions early and often, and make sure that you pick the people to actually continue that conversation with, and help them self-select as well. You know, they don't want to be wasting their time. And this is a lot of wasted time on both sides if almost 70% of leads are consulting with businesses that they didn't hire. Now, if we zoom out and we say, well, what's this whole like scene look like? I have, you know, lead channels, I have marketing campaigns, I have advertising programs that I'm running, and I'm getting referrals. I'm on local listing sites. I've got my organic search game dialed in. I'm doing all this link building with SEO, trying to give away like calculators and freebies and stuff like that, so that people find me useful and then they're going to hire me. Well, then they start to reach out. Then they're going to call, email, text, website chat, online form, TikTok message, whatever. Who is actually going to respond to that inbound message? Is it someone who is, I don't know, I have technician in here, sales rep, you know, someone who's an assistant, receptionist service? Is it automated? Is it you? Oftentimes it's you, and that's why things get missed, because you're too busy. And, you know, sometimes the people who are, you know, on the front lines are not tapped into enough to be your resource there, because the most important thing that happens like in the first 3 stages here and up through qualification is this person worthy of more, you know, conversations, right? Should we continue this conversation or not? If not, are you, you know, providing a solid referral? Are you recommending that they talk to someone else to help to establish sort of your expertise and your brand presence and how you want to be in your community? I don't just say like, okay, hang up on those people who are not good qualified leads, but for those who are qualified leads, then the rest of the work begins, right? Then you've got maybe quotes or estimates, then you've got follow-up meetings before you win them as a new client. Sometimes it's easier, sometimes it's not. So we want to think about like, all right, what does the sales funnel look like, and where are the leaks, you know, here that we want to address today? And if you've got, you know, at the very top of the funnel, website visitors, social media followers, people who might be exposed to your messaging or discover you. After that, you know, we get into a pool of qualified leads. And those are people who are completing your form, they're engaging in a website chat, they're calling in, they're emailing, they're expressing some intent and readiness potentially. They might even complete a more complex form. They might have a conversation where they, you know, really dive into more information, because so often when that conversation is initiated, it's not actually crafted in a way that there's enough information that's captured. So the first 3 stages here are what we're going to focus on. After the consult is scheduled and completed, you know, where you, the business owner, or your associates are having those conversations, that's in your court, right? You've got a retained client, people who are on the front line for you, like Smith.ai or your assistants, even the chatbot. Chatbot's probably not closing for you. So what I like to do here is just take a pause and say, do you know what the cost of acquisition is? What is the return on your investment of marketing activities and the traffic that you're generating, so that we can see what the gaps are, right? And this is where we see the leaks. Like basically imagine every line, there could be a dotted line and there are leaks sort of streaming through there and they're going in the trash. Like anyone who is not being engaged properly, or anyone who's moving through and taking space for someone who should be there, not them, you know, that is a leak in your lead funnel. If we have 1,000 visitors, 80 leads, obviously there's a bit of a leak there, and we may or may not be concerned about that. We might think to ourselves, you know, I've got these people who are calling out of 1,000 visitors. Let's say your only channel is phone calls. Got 80 people who call you, and of those 40 are qualified opportunities where you actually want to talk to that person. And obviously this is just a framework that is basic. your clients may be worth more than $2,000 to you, whatever. You can do the math with the, blank sheet after this webinar. But when we think about those callers, 80 callers out of 1,000, you might think, well, is my phone number obvious on my website? What does it look like on desktop or mobile? What color is it? Is it high contrast? You can see here on this slide, I have orange and I have white. Is your phone number orange on a white website? It's going to be pretty darn obvious. Is it beige? It's not going to be so obvious, right? So think about like, what are the things that I can control up front to make those sort of capture points more obvious? If you have website chat, does it, not load for 20 seconds? That's an eternity. People are probably not chatting with you, versus if you have website chat pop up on the site really immediately, you're going to get more chats. Now, what you need to do is to then think about, well, how much do I want that extra activity and those conversations coming through? If I know that my web traffic in general is really good quality, that there are people who are visiting my site, even visiting social, visiting any sort of platform where you have a profile, are those places where you're getting qualified leads? Good, then you should be making it more obvious. You should make it easier to give you a call, send you a message, and then to reply and make sure that that conversation's happening right then and there, so that person doesn't just wait around and leave. Now, 40 qualified opportunities, is that something that we can control to become more consultations? Well, probably, if we think about how we can schedule as soon as we know that there's a qualified lead, there's someone who is ready, they have the budget, they have the mindset that says, I'm looking for an agency right now, get them to that consultation, get that call transferred, get that in the hands of someone who can do something with that, right? So these are the mechanisms that we can control, and you can easily see that if instead of 80 leads, we had 100 or 150, maybe we can double the leads from our website visitors. That has an effect down the funnel. And for the same amount of activity up front, the same amount of web visitors, we can actually see improved results without any additional marketing spend, but working on our business systems. So that's really what we're talking about here today. And when we think about the conversion metrics, this again is something that is, I shared the slides with you already. This is a tool that you can use. Don't be afraid to play around with the numbers here, and you don't have to have every single number for this to be useful. You might even skip a step. You might say, I don't even know the visitors, but I know out of the leads I get this many consultations. All right, then just look at that and determine, is there something that you can control there based on what we're going to talk about today? So what are we focused on here? We're focused on the top 3 sections of the funnel. We're not focused on the actual sale being made, that conversation that is in your camp as far as we're concerned today. Now, as we get into, improvements and changes that we can make, one of the things that I really rely on is the Eisenhower decision matrix. And this is probably something that you're doing, even if you've never heard about this before, but do you do it now? Do you decide and you schedule a time to do it later? Do you delegate it, or do you delete it and eliminate it completely? And this really has to do with how urgent is it and how important is it? And what it means in this context is, often what happens is things that are inbound leads, those sort of activities, we see them as, fairly important, depending on how much spam you get and how much noise is coming through to you potentially. So it's sort of not seen as urgent. And then maybe we delegate it if we're lucky, maybe we just decide we're going to get to it later. And as a result, something that should be done now by someone who is not you, whose time is precious and really valuable to the business, we end up punting that. And then there's actually nothing to delegate later. So that opportunity evaporates the more that time goes on. And this is very, very true for leads. Like the amount of time that it takes for you to get back to a lead, if it's within 5 minutes, you have magnitudes more likelihood of actually talking to and converting that lead than if you wait a whole 24 hours, if you even wait 5 hours. So what I really recommend that you do, the first step here is to inventory all of the channels that are coming through. It might seem like a kindergarten exercise, but it's really not, because the first step is to just take an inventory and say, where am I getting calls from? Where do I have a phone number on any online profile? Where am I engaging on social media? Where do I have business profiles listed in a marketplace or any sort of directory? And can I identify, what is going to come in from that channel? Is it going to be a phone call? Is it going to be an email? Is there a special form that gets filled out and it sends to my, text message or Slack or Microsoft Teams channel? Like, where are those coming in? Do you have to actually log into a specific profile just to respond in messages? Like Google My Business is a great example of that. You need the Google My Business app to respond to those messages on your phone. That is something that is really easy if you don't have your notifications set up to ignore. And then as a result, you spend all that time making your Google My Business profile fantastic, but then you're not actually logging in and seeing the activity there. So make sure that you have that inventoried. And then the next step is sort of the assignment. So you can say, well, what is the source? Is it Facebook or is it a directory? And then what is my process? Who is responsible? And what I want to focus on here is often we conflate responsibility and accountability. Yes, as a business owner, as the agency owner, you are accountable, but you are not necessarily responsible for that specific task. Who can do these things for you? Who can answer those inbound calls? Who can answer those Facebook messages? How can you offload some of this important work that is urgent work, but does not need to be handled necessarily by the principal of the firm, of the agency? So think about also, are there any other tasks that you can delegate, that you can offload from your plate? And are there ways to hand that off to either staff members, talent that's outsourced, or solutions like technology? And we'll talk about that with calendaring and a few other things. But it's really important that you start to identify, maybe this is not in my comfort zone, but I am bogged down, I am overloaded, and all those things that I was doing to build up the business, I don't necessarily need to continue doing right now because that's fairly well established. And I need to help train people and get systems in place to do this without my direct involvement, right? So let's talk about intake. And this process is mapped out for specifically like law firm, financial advisor, agency owner. I just take one business and I say, look, in general, professional services work this way, so don't worry too much about the terminology. There is going to be a form that's filled out either with a human being, they're on their own on their website, they're typing in their data, right? And then the contact record is created using that form, probably in your system of record. And then there is a new client record, a case file, et cetera, in a really simple way. Now, the more, intermediate process is that you've got someone on your website, there's a chat that happens, maybe there's even a call that happens because they don't get all their answers from the chat. They explain their needs for the services. They explain, are they fit to be a potential client? Do they have the funds? Do they have the timing? Is there another decision maker? Like, what are all the touch points here in this process? And you probably haven't mapped this whole thing out. Kudos to you if you have, but this is another way to think about, like, what are the leaks in this funnel? Do I have chats and I never capture that phone number and I'm not calling them again? That's potentially a problem. Do I have people who are explaining the needs for their services and then they don't end up scheduling an appointment? Do I follow up with them and say, are you still interested? Or do I even collect information that their timing isn't right now, but their timing is going to be right in 3 months? Do I follow up with them then? Is there a way for me to actually capture in my systems how to and when to follow up with them, where they came in from? That data informs a really solid next step that increases your likelihood of success, right? So maybe conflict checks isn't super relevant for you, but either way, like, you have visibility with that person, that potential client, into their expectations. You can also set your own expectations here and say, we're very busy. We're not accepting new clients, or we only accept new clients who demonstrate, these 3 things. Let's go through those and see if you're a good fit. And from the beginning, you have this transparency and also data collection at the same time. Now, there may be more, complex situations. We don't have a ton of time to go through everything, but what I want to identify is the core questions that we need to ask. They're very, similar across industries. So let's think about, like, maybe not court date or marital status, maybe depends. Think about the forms that you fill out for clients. What are the core things that are must-haves? What are the indicators that they're a good fit, that they're going to be a good source of new and consistent revenue for you? They're going to be valuable. They're not going to be a pain in the butt. Like, oftentimes what is not included on these intake forms, and you don't even see it here, is, well, how do I feel about this person on the first meeting of them? Now, if someone's doing this for you, they're not going to have a personal read on it. You probably don't want that. But if right now you are doing that, one of the best things that you can do is say, like, what's my temperature on this person? Am I cold? Am I warm? Am I hot? Do I really want to work with them? Or do I feel a little hesitation here? Because that can also help you ask and prod why. Like, what is it about this conversation that's not going well? They're bossy. Maybe they think they know all the answers. Maybe they're really demanding on the time that they have available to work with you, or the price they want to pay. These are the things that you also want to keep a flag out for and say, you know what, I'm seeing in the last 10 conversations I've had that I really get turned off when someone says to me, like, I want this thing done in a week, right? The problem is, like, if you don't set those expectations, you end up taking clients who take space in your book of business from other clients. Like, you can only have so many consultations or meetings or client work in a day. So think about, like, what do those signals mean for how you do your intake? Are you asking things up front? And then how do we identify, like, what are the, what are the details of this potential client? What are the financial details? Are they going to use your systems? Is there a client portal? Are there online payments? Are there things that you need them to be able to use? And a level of agreement there that you feel like they're not going to be a pain in the rear to work with. What is their expected, time to work with you? And does that match up with your expected time to work with them? And in addition to all of the, contact details, how to reach them, et cetera, are you also capturing how they heard about you? Because that is just as important as any of the basic pieces of information. And it's often the most fleeting. So if you ask me, how did you find that, lap desk or something that you use sitting on the sofa at night working? I would say, like, I searched for it on Google. Oh, what was your search term? Like, I'm super interested. I want to know what you searched for. What did you literally type in? I couldn't tell you, right? So I could guess, but if you ask someone, what did you search for, or who referred you, or I was in a Facebook group and, oh, this person in one of my local Facebook groups referred me. I'm not going to remember their name after the next hour, maybe. So if you are talking to a potential client and you are gathering all this information, or someone's doing it for you, make sure you have a field that says, how did you hear about us? Capture the source of that referral, of that search, of that directory, whatever it is. The more information that you can collect right then, the easier it will be to actually repeat that success. Maybe you should be participating more and hanging out more in that Facebook group. Maybe you should be investing more in the polished profile on that directory, et cetera. How do you know where to invest your time at the top of the funnel is often directed by those conversations that happen, with people who came through those channels. And then, do you actually want those people who are coming through? If everyone's coming through a Facebook group and they are, naming that group, they're naming the people in that group, and there are a few people who always refer not the right clients to you, then obviously you're not going to spend a lot more time there. Or maybe you'll reach out to those people and say, you know what, can we have a conversation so I can explain what I do? Because that's going to be a way to tighten up your funnel. You want to be reaching out. You want to be taking in this data and determining, am I actually spending my time and energy wisely? Can I control more of this funnel? Oftentimes we think, oh, it came from Facebook. Oh, it came from Twitter. It came from a directory. I don't have any control. I don't control where I sit alphabetically in the directory. I don't have any control over Facebook. It's just this like unwieldy beast. Well, you actually do, and you can control where you put your time and attention. And then when those people contact you, if you document these, leads who are coming through, you can then go back and say, look, hindsight's 2020. The last 10 leads who came in from Facebook were on average, 50% more revenue or valuable to me than my average lead, or 50% less, or they didn't convert, or they're not serious, or they're very serious. So how do you determine, where your channels are going to be focused on, where your marketing is going to be focused on? It has to start with documentation. And often the problem is people are not consistently using the same form. Business owners are very knowledgeable about who makes a good potential client. So that ends up resulting in a lack of documentation. And if you don't document it, then you can't delegate it. So if you don't have it outlined, if you can't teach it, if you can't repeat it, how is someone going to do that for you? So the more that you start doing this yourself and you start thinking, am I going to actually have some discipline here? And when I talk to a new potential client, I'm going to ask them the same questions. And I'm going to always ask them where they heard about me. And I'm going to then once a week look back and say, well, where did the best clients come from this week? Where did those best leads come from this week? And can I do anything to shift my marketing mix towards those better leads, towards those ones who I actually really want to work? And then next, I'm going to actually spend my time following up most with those good leads. It sounds really simple, and a lot of us just don't do it. So let's think about well, if I'm going to delegate it, do I have a script, or do I, set out a process? Oftentimes, if you just have the right form, if you have the next step in the workflow, they complete the form and then they're presented with an opportunity to schedule time on a calendar. That would be a process. That's not a script. It's not like an automaton, like robot saying, okay, now we're doing this, like a factory. You're not putting the leads through a factory. You're having a natural conversation, whether it's you or someone on your staff or outsourced. And that will, just having that form, just having that next step for calendaring, let's say, that will help you just offload some of this work and consistently get the data that helps you make good decisions. So when we're talking about calendaring, and when I talk about calendaring, I mean tools like Calendly, Acuity, any tools that allow you to connect your Google Calendar, iCalendar, Outlook Calendar, et cetera, with an online calendaring solution that allows you to share a link to your calendar, embed your calendar on your website or link to it, right? And then it's hosted online. You can see only availability that is open on your calendar. And the beautiful thing is that it's not just any open availability on your calendar. It's also only availability that you set as open for that calendar type. So you could have personal stuff going on. You can have work meetings. You could even have a block on your calendar that's for lunch or for morning, focus time, and only allow for meetings for your new client consultations in the afternoon or in the morning or Monday, Wednesday, Friday. All of these tools are $10, $15, $20 a month. And they allow you, for the cost of a few cups of Starbucks coffee, to basically outsource to either the lead or an assistant, receptionist, staff member, whatever, to do that calendaring for you. And then when you come into work, you actually have your meetings booked, you show up, and you don't have to do all of that front work. Someone has done that for you. And if you have questions as part of this process, because Calendly and Acuity, when you're booking a meeting, it's not just, all right, well, what's your name and number and how do we reach you? How does this meeting happen? Maybe there's a Zoom link. There's also an opportunity there to ask specific questions. So if you are on the Smith.ai website, for example, and you're trying to book a meeting for a consultation, you will be asked like, well, what services are you interested in? What's your business website? And, what is your, let's say, company size? Well, that's really important. If you're a company size of, 50,000, we're probably not the right fit for you. And the same things intuitively about your own clients. If they answer certain questions in a certain way, you have a pretty good sense of, are they going to be worth a meeting or not? You can ask those questions right in your calendar, and you sort of get the intake form and the scheduling solution done in one go. So the only recommendation that I make here is that if you can, don't just have one calendar type. You typically want to have two at least. One is for, well, plus one for existing clients who might need scheduled time with you. One is for like a really short callback meeting, and another is for a full consultation. And what we find at Smith.ai, for example, is if you're outsourcing this or if people are scheduling meetings with you, if you don't know, especially as you get started, well, is this person worth a 60-minute consultation, a 30-minute consultation? Sometimes you just need a 15-minute callback for those sort of hard to determine leads where they sound good, they're not ready to give any information, they want to talk to the business owner, you don't want to say turn them all down. Have that 15-minute callback so that you can just like have that scheduled, maybe it could be live transferred to you, and have a quick meeting and say, you know what, is this person the best new client, not the best client? Let me figure that out right now. At least you didn't spend 30, 45, 60 minutes on a full consultation where they feel like they own you for that amount of time that they blocked off, right? So there's some flexibility here, and just make sure that you build in the calendar that you want that works for you. If you are not good on the phone in the afternoons because you're tired and you're winding down for the day, or that's your quiet work mode where your head's down, don't open up your calendar for those times. That's going to hurt your conversion rate, and you'll have a whole new leak in your lead funnel, right? So just think, even throughout the next week, even throughout the next few days, after we've had this session, like think about, when am I at my top of my game for, talking to other people, having meetings, doing deep focus work, planning and strategy and budgeting, systems administration, all those things that, either thankless tasks or things that we really like to do. When do you do that in your day, and when do you like to do that in your day? And then set your calendar up around that with sort of the biggest rocks and chunks taking up that space first, and then making sure there's availability in between. Now, the last thing that I'll say about calendaring is that if you don't add in buffer time for yourself, then you will end up feeling back to back and too stacked and stressed out by that. Even if you are, very knowledgeable, taking notes, like putting them into your CRM or business system while you're on the phone, it can feel exhausting to go back to back between meetings. I think we all know that. So in these calendaring tools, there's something called buffer time, and you can add it before and after meetings. I often add the same amount for both, and I'll add 15 minutes before and after. Does that mean that you might have meetings that are scheduled on the 15 or on the 45, and a meeting starting at 4:45? It doesn't have to be, it might, but having that buffer time is at least good for your mental state to say, like, I'm gonna take notes, I'm gonna go move my legs for a second, and then I'm gonna come back, or I'm gonna check my email or check in with my team or see what else I need to do. Because having those things back to back, as soon as you start getting this calendaring in place, oftentimes what happens is that the funnel starts working really well, and you realize, like, I had all of these leads who I wasn't even trying to capture, and now I'm too busy in another way. So just protect yourself. You don't have to go from 0 to 100 that quickly. Put in the buffer time. If you feel like there's still meetings that are getting booked a week out, you probably don't have enough time in your calendar this week, unless you see it only rarely. Sure, there are going to be people who prefer that. That's their own calendar. If you see regularly, most meetings are getting booked like a week out, then typically that's not common. People who are on the phone who want to connect with your business, they are looking to meet with you in the next couple of days, right? Unless it's like vacation or Christmas time or Hanukkah or whatever, right? So just something to be mindful of. So when you set these meeting types, we're focused on, potential new clients, PNCs right now, but current clients also might warrant their own meeting type and workflow. Then who is going to actually own those meetings? Do you have other business partners or associates? Who's going to be booking that for you? Do you put it on your website? Is it in your email signature? There's a wonderful tool called Wise Stamp, like Wise Owl, Wise Stamp. And that puts a really nice email signature in for you. And you can include links like to your calendar for that. Then what is the timing, right? So how much availability do you have? Are there things that are going to block you from doing this? Like, do you need to go and get a calendaring system? Does it need to work with, your Google Calendar or Apple iCalendar? Those are a couple of things you need to put in place first. So think about your timing to launch and think about also the time of that actual appointment. Are you having 15, 30, 60-minute appointments? And you might also find, there are some meetings that incur a payment or everything is free. Make sure that you have those systems set up so that your billing is also connected to meetings if that has to be in place. Now, the third step here is really making sure that follow-up is effectively handled, actually handled at all, because the biggest leak is often beyond number one, being very quick to pick up, instantaneous. Following up is the next biggest leak, because we see that it takes 6 attempts to actually reach these leads before you get a plateau. So what I mean is, you can see at one call attempt, only 48% of the leads who are going to convert at that point. And then at the 6th attempt, you get to 93%. Now, sure, do you start to plateau around the 4th attempt? Yes, we start to see that curve flatten. But do you stop then? Well, no, you're going from 86% to 93%. There's still a big gap there of clients that you can still win and engage. The most important thing is make that second call, obviously, right? You go from 48% to 70%. There are people who are waiting to hear from you. They're too busy. They're caring for their kids and elderly parents. They have work, they have lives. It's COVID right now still. There are so many things that are going on that have nothing to do with you. So don't make it about you and keep making those calls. Sometimes people ask me, well, how much should I follow up? I've already done 3-4 follow-ups and I haven't heard back from them yet. I would follow up if you have time, if you have, resources and systems who can even do that for you. I think Smith.ai is making outbound calls. You should do that insofar as you still see like a connection rate after the 5th and 6th attempt, and only stop if they tell you before that 6th attempt not to call them anymore. If they're not telling you, I'm not interested, if they're not telling you, don't call me, why would you assume that they don't want to hear from you? That's commonly a mistake because of our own discomfort, not because of anything that they're upset about. We just don't know, is this still worthwhile? And this data is to help you feel confident that it is still worthwhile, and you don't see a plateau until, you might say the 9th, 10th attempt, but in all, reasonable work-life balance, even payment for another service to do this for you, you're not going to probably make more than 6 attempts. So combined with email and SMS follow-up, you can send text messages before or after these calls. You can send emails. You can add them to your newsletter as long as you have their permission. Then, those are additional touch points that might actually turn the 6 into 12 or 18, right? So you might have a lot more touch points than just 6, but for calls, which we know are very effective, in addition to texts and emails, we want to be making those attempts. And typically, at least for Smith.ai, that call triggers the next activity. So let's say you have a call that goes out to someone who came inbound as a lead. If you don't reach them and you leave a voicemail, then you send the text message, or then you send the email, I just tried to reach you, right? So having the calls in place means the rest of the system can also fall into place, because that's what sets that cadence. So determine what your follow-up process is going to be, because these activities, let's say up to 10 activities, these activities are going to have a huge impact. Look at 48% to 93%. Like, the converted leads that you get on that first call are just like half of the available leads to you. This is it's a crime to waste money on like all those leads and only make one attempt, only have that inbound call come through, not even have that next call, the call after that, the call after that. So if you can carve time out for two things, one is making sure you have a system solution to get those calls answered, and two, make sure you have a solution to get those calls followed up with. And it's not just calls. It might be outbound calls to people who filled out your form, who chatted in, who sent a message through a directory. You should be capturing their phone number through those different channels. So if there's no way to get back in touch with them, and sometimes we see this actually with chat, which is next, like there are chat bots, widgets, whatever software that will allow a chat to begin without capturing contact information. You just start chatting. You say, oh, does your agency do this? I'm looking for an agency that does that. Fine, but are we actually asking for their name? Sure, I'd be happy to answer that for you. What's your name and your phone number? And what's the best email for you? Okay, now we can answer those questions. Or even better, to even ask those questions, you have to provide that information first. Because if you don't do that, then you have no shot of getting back in touch with that person who gets the answer that they want, and then they bounce, right? Now they might be using that answer and deliberating about a competitor, talking to someone about something else. And if you can establish a relationship and a connection at that point, just by providing useful information, then you can follow up with that person and say, like, where are you in your decision-making process? What are you looking for here? And what drove you to ask that question, right? So what we often see is that chat is really good for those common questions, but it's often a source of new leads who are not necessarily coming through from phone calls. So people are looking for a silent conversation. They have their kids at home. They are at work. They don't want to be, seen doing something for their, personal or for other business. And they might be multitasking. They're not always able to pick up the phone and give a call. So chat, text, social channels is really important for having those non-sort of audible conversations. And one lead for every, let's say, 4 calls is not uncommon. You can see like a 20 to 30% lift in the leads who are going to come through chat who wouldn't have called. So it's a net new lead, right? And what we see is that it also reduces the calls that come through that are just pestering questions, because chat can handle those, and then only see, all right, is there a real conversation here, or is someone just looking for free advice? Very easy to tell by someone's demeanor, the words they choose, their tone on chat, if they're serious or not. Do they bounce? Do they say thank you? Do they engage in conversation? All really good signs that you would have to be put through a phone conversation for 15 minutes to figure out, all right, is this person like messing with me or not? So a really good screening tool, and it will allow you to also capture a larger available audience who might be visiting your website on their phone, on desktop, and not really be available for a phone call right then, but they want to engage. How often, how easy are these websites to search around and find information? Not as easy as you might think. You might have a great user experience, great navigation on your site. People are still not going to find the time to follow along every drop-down menu and try and find the resources. They're looking for chat. That is your site search, right? That's the way that they're seeking information. So identify potential uses for live chat and see if there's a way to leverage sort of efficiency here, some autonomy with either live staff chat or with chatbot solutions that you can program with common answers to common questions. Now, if you want to set these things up, so that you can, identify all your frontline tasks and, get someone in place who's an assistant who you have to manage and monitor and compensate and have benefits for. Everything that's obviously a big commitment for agency owners. So that's why Smith.ai is in place, is to not have you worry about staffing your frontline, but have people who can do it for you, with a team of hundreds of North America-based receptionists who sound like they are of your agency, who sound like they're of your business, who sound like they work right alongside you, but they're actually available for affordable, flexible monthly plans that also bring a lot of technology into your firm and allow you to operate more efficiently with more flexibility without the management burden. So what we're able to do is to have, all these calls coming through, whether they are leads or clients, blocking spam, of course, inbound and outbound, receiving those calls and also making immediate follow-up calls based on your custom instructions, and then taking that next step in the workflow, using that calendar link to schedule meetings, transferring calls to you for those immediate important calls that come through, answering simple questions, not based on our expertise, but simple questions and answers about your business. And then even collecting payment for people who owe you money using credit cards and e-payment. Now, if we get this workflow set up, then you have the peace of mind that you are not missing calls or chats or messages, that you are setting up meetings and collecting payments and collecting intake forms on those new clients and existing clients. You're prioritizing calls and you're reducing noise and interruptions in your day. You're also allowing your staff to work more productively with these seamless integrations. So whatever Smith.ai is doing for you, that's logged in your system of record. It's not something that then that admin who you didn't have to hire, now you have to hire them to put all this data into your systems. That's not what we want. It goes in automatically through software integrations between our system and yours, with no login, no extra, user seat that you have to pay for, right? It goes in automatically. These are 24/7, 365 agents and AI. You can have our live agents on your calls, chats, text messages, etc. You can also have chatbot on your website, which is free for 24/7 use. With upgrades, you can pay a very reasonable fee of like $50 to $100 a month, depending on the admins, for unlimited chats that are coming through. So if you have really high volume, you have amazing SEO, that can be a really great feature. And then of those calls that do still come through, you have live support helping you figure out who's the best quality lead, completing those intake forms with them, making sure that we're having a really great experience for those potential clients, to embody sort of what it means to work with your agency without putting you on the front line every single time, right? So the plans start at $240 a month. There is a discount for IAOA members, and I believe it's $100 off, and the code is IAOA. But I will also share that, there's a free chatbot with every phone and, outreach campaign plan. There is a free CRM integration, and you obviously get our white glove support. So you don't have to be a technologist to work with Smith.ai. We will make sure that it works with your phone system. We will make sure that it works with your website. We will even install these things in your phone system and on your website for you. You can, be right alongside us. You can have us just go and do it. But we are a trusted partner for thousands of businesses. On the outreach side, we also are able to make high scale campaign calls. If you have a long list of leads who you haven't followed up with in a while, we actually just went back ourselves a year and we're contacting leads from the last year and invited them to our educational programs to have a conversation with us. What we found is that just as many leads from a year ago as a month ago were interested in still talking to us. So if you think that those leads have expired, they haven't necessarily expired. And I would encourage you to go ahead and try and engage with them again, and we can help you do that. As I mentioned, everything here is white glove. You will share how you want your calls to be handled, your chats, etc. You will assign or forward them to us, depending on if it's ongoing daily services or if it's certain campaigns that you're doing on a monthly basis. And then you'll try risk-free for 14 days. Setup is easy and it's fully compatible with your systems. So as I mentioned, when we think about how we can solve the leaks in the lead funnel, there are a lot of things that happen, not just more qualified leads, not just better systems where we can more easily identify who the quality leads are, who we want to spend our time and attention on, but you'll also be able to extend your hours and capacity to 24/7, 365. You'll be able to put that on Google and say, we're open, call us instead of those other guys. You'll be able to boost your marketing results without spending more money on campaigns, getting more leads out of those existing programs. More responsiveness also improves client happiness, how they feel they're being engaged with your business, staff productivity, who's not interrupted by calls. Obviously, the reduced noise and interruptions, not getting bothered by spammers. And what we want is more clients and better clients we feel like really evoke what we're trying to do with our business and the clients we really want to work with. If you get this system dialed in, the major benefit is that you have more control over the clients you accept. You can be pickier. You could say, these are the clients I really want, and I don't have to take those other clients who I don't necessarily want to engage with anymore. I'm maturing my business at that point. And that's why, clients like Justy Nickel, who is, I think, 3 years now running with Smith.ai or longer, maybe 4, she says that Smith.ai is my secret to business growth and client happiness. So she's a 3rd-generation business owner. She's in real estate. She's in legal. She has a number of businesses. And she knows that the most important thing is to delegate and streamline and automate so that she can focus on things that are strategic, high level, and not just day-to-day. So we would love to chat with you. I hope this has been helpful. I have slammed through a lot of content here, but if you do wish to book a consultation, I will put this in the chat, and I can keep showing my slide while I do this, and I'll put that in the chat so that you can schedule time. There we go. Okay, so if you click on that link, then you will get not only the free consultation for 30 minutes to talk about how we can work with your business, but also you will get the $100 off with the code IAOA. And I'm putting that in the chat as well. You will find us obviously on the directory on the IAOA website, where we are a preferred vendor. And any questions that you have, please feel free to get in touch with us. The email is hello@smith.ai. You can hear us live if you call 650-727-6484 and hear how our receptionists sound. You can chat with us on our website. And obviously you can visit us at Smith.ai. So I hope this was helpful to you. And we'll take a quick look now and see if there are any questions. And I don't believe that there are. So with that, everyone, thank you so much. It was great to be with you here today. And I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Take care.